Colin Mochrie and Brad Sherwood are scared scriptless, and they're inviting you to come and watch. The performers from the CW's popular comedy improv show Whose Line Is It Anyway are bringing their live stage show to the Idaho Falls Civic Center for the Performing Arts later this month. I spoke with them over the phone ahead of their stop in eastern Idaho. Here's the conversation I had with them. It's a pleasure to talk to you. So, first of all, the name of the show is Scared Scriptless, and it's November 29th at the Idaho Falls Civic Auditorium. This is kind of a takeoff of your show, Whose Line Is It Anyway?
Yeah, we like to say it's a live version of Whose Line without the tall guy and the black guy.
How is it going to differ from the TV show?
The difference is it's actually even more interactive than a TV show. Every game starts with suggestions from the audience. We have audience members on stage with us because we don't have to do, on television, there's time constraints. Everything has to be fairly short, fast, and snappy. In the stage show, we can take more time with scenes, and, it can go 10, 15 minutes.
Yes, that is, both those things are true. And we bring up more audience members and use more information from them than in a normal episode of Whose Line. On Whose Line, the producers would come up with a lot of the suggestions, and then they might, have the host turn to the audience and ask for like one thing. Or if we played sound effects, we'd have two audience members come up. But people are coming up through our whole show, which I think makes it more fun when you see the show live, to know that we've got all these people coming up, putting us through our paces, and, they're setting little traps for us and, making us work. So I think that's what the audience enjoys, seeing us sort of dig our way out of ideas that don't seem like they're usable.
Right. Well, and I'm kind of curious because when you this is all off the cuff, so, how do you do it?
There's not really a strategy. It's kind of, we've both been doing it for so long that we rely on our instincts, for lack of a better description. Sort of like if you were a martial artist and you trained and did martial arts for 20 years and became a grandmaster of martial arts, and then you got into actual combat, you wouldn't know exactly what the person coming at you was going to throw at you. So you'd have to react with all your instincts to, push them out of the way, knock them down, block a punch. So it's kind of the comedy version of that, more so than anything else in comedy, because everything else in comedy tends to be written. Sketches are written, stand-up acts are written, comedy films, all that stuff. So we're the ones that are using our experience and instincts to turn stuff into funny as it's being thrown at us.
Basically, it's sort of a relaxed panic. We're in survival mode because, we're trying to make a show from things the audience gives us. So basically, all our preparation is just trying to be as relaxed on stage as possible so that we're ready for anything that comes our way. Basically, us listening to each other and just accepting what the other person is giving and building on it. It's actually a lot easier than people think it is. Our lives are improvised. Every day we're improvising. We just sort of move that from life to stage and making it funny.
But, particularly if anyone who's familiar with Whose Line Is It Anyway, there's a number of different games and bits you guys do on there. You have some singing games. You have various things like that. Is there going to be singing in the live show?
There is going to be singing. Part of the show is Brad and I always come up with new ways of taking it outside our comfort zone so we never get comfortable. And for me, that is anything that has to do with music. So we have a couple of music games where we're singing to audience members. So it's, there will be music.
But so it's one thing to do improv just with speaking bits, but then you throw the singing element in there. That puts a whole new challenge. So, is there anything? How do you do that?
It's terrifying. The guys who do it well, like Brad and Wayne, Chip Eston, they have a special gift. The only thing I have going for me is I'm the audience representative. They see the panic in my eyes and go, exactly, that's what I would do if I was up there. It's just trying to relax with the music and try to find rhymes. I'm not quite sure how it works, but it seems to.
I see. What are your favorite bits to perform, and then what are the ones that are the most challenging for you?
The hardest I think, are the singing ones, but I really like doing them. I'm a fan of the sort of the Sunday New York Times crossword puzzle. So the harder it is, the better for me, which is because it's more challenging. I think if you love what you do and there is a challenge to what you do, you're going to always want to seek more challenge as opposed to finding the easy way out. And the song music improv is hard because sometimes you're having to sound and or perform like an existing performer. You're having to make sense of the suggestion. You're having to write lyrics, sing on key, follow the music people, and make it rhyme in the best of all possible worlds as well. So that's a lot of plates to sort of be spinning at the same time inside your brain. And so that's why I like that. I think generally our least favorite game, though, however, is Hoedown, because we've been doing it for so long, and it's sort of such a slow-paced thing. So it's not that it's difficult; it's just sort of we're all over it. That's like the friggin' Christmas fruit roll, fruit cake at the holiday party. Like it's always there, but no one actually enjoys it.
But that seems to be the signature one and the most popular.
Well, it's certainly, it might only be most popular because it's beaten everyone down. Sort of like that radio hit, that AM pop tune that you can't help hum along with because you've heard it so many times, right. But you really don't like it.
Yeah, that's true.
I think it's that more so for the viewers. Yeah.
I see. Okay.
And they also see how much we don't like it, which the sadist in everyone enjoys seeing someone do something they don't want to do.
Right. Well, okay, so let's shift gears a little bit. So you've been doing this live show for 17 years, and then I don't know, the TV show has been around for what, 15 years now? Maybe more?
No, if you count all incarnations, including the British version, it's been on for 30 years. We actually just celebrated last year in London. We did a 30th anniversary holiday special, which Colin and I were in, and I don't know if you've ever seen the British version, but Clive Anderson, who's the original host, he hosted it, and Josie Lawrence and Mike McShane, who were regulars on the British version, and Greg and I and Colin and Jeff Davis from the CW version, we all performed. And Tip was there. Charles Esten was there as well. So, and we played at the Royal Albert Hall. So it was really a fun 30th anniversary.
Tell me about how Whose Line Is It Anyway got started originally.
It actually started in Britain as a radio show, and then they moved it to television. And because improv was still a fairly new art form at that point, they would bring North Americans over. So that's how Brad and I and Ryan first got involved. And they always wanted to do a American version of it. And Drew was a fan of the show. Ryan was working with Drew at that point on the Drew Carey show, and he got the producers and Drew together. And at that point, Drew was sort of the king of ABC, so it was sort of on his. Because of his involvement, we got the show on the air.
How did you get started in improv, and what appealed to you about that specifically?
I saw a demonstration of it when I was in theater school, and I just thought it was really exciting. People getting suggestions from the audience and then making up something in front of your very eyes. And I love also the ensemble aspect of it. With stand-up, you're kind of by yourself. It's you against the audience. When you're working with people, it takes a lot of pressure off. And also, if you're dying with friends.
I was doing Second City in Los Angeles, and I was in the touring company, which is sort of the AAA team for the main stage show. And Ryan was in the main stage show, and I was his understudy. So whenever he was working or couldn't perform, I would go in for him. And he told me that the producers of Whose Line, which he had already been doing the British version for several years, were coming to town to look for new people. And so I went to the audition and auditioned all day. It was like a version of Chorus Line. They just continued to cut people, and the longer you stayed, the fewer people were there. And I got on the British version from that audition years and years and years ago. And I think I shot in like 92. That's when I did my first one, and I did 3 seasons of the British version. And then it moved subsequently to Los Angeles, and
So you were involved in the original show on ABC, and that ran for 8 or 9 seasons, I think, if I remember right.
Yeah. 8 seasons, yeah.
And then the new show launched in 2013. Is that right? Something like that?
That sounds about right, yeah. I think we just finished the 6th or 7th season.
What was the reason for you ended on one network and then you start up a few years later on another network. What was the reason for that?
Well, the producers just were trying to revive it, It kind of left unceremoniously off of ABC because we were on Thursday nights for the longest time, opposite Survivor and Friends. So, and Seinfeld, I think it was. So, of course, we were going to get horrible ratings. And they had put us there because our show was so cheap to shoot that even with mediocre ratings, we weren't losing the money. But then, you have networks that look at the bottom line like going, oh, you're getting clobbered in the ratings. And, anytime they moved us to a different time slot, we did really well. So it's just sort of, and you've been around for 8 years, so you're not the shiny new object anymore, and that's what happens to shows.
And then once the show was over, nothing kind of happened with it. And then Brett and I noticed on our tour that our audiences were actually getting younger, which is very unusual. And it was because these kids that weren't around during the Drew Carey days were catching up with the show online. It was basically because of that we managed to get on the CW.
I see. But it seems to have taken on a new life, totally, on a new network, and it's...
The producers kind of got somebody interested and, thought that we could reboot it, and it worked, and, I think people feel differently about which version is their favorite, but, we got another 6, who knows if we get picked up next year, more seasons out of it.
It's definitely got a different pacing to it. If you watch the original show compared with now, it's much more fast-paced, and you try to cram more content into less time, it feels like.
Yeah. I would say there is definitely less time, and I think CW has often, tried to have cameos from people that are on shows of theirs, which I don't think serves our show that well. I think it's better to just let the really funny people do what they do, but sometimes that happens.
What I've always loved about the show is it doesn't take any time. We usually do 2 weekends of the year. So it's a chance for us to get together. We don't really see each other during the year. And it's just like riding a bicycle. We get back into the same kind of groove. It's always fun. It's short enough that we don't get on each other's nerves, so we all still really like each other. It's always the fun part of the year.
Being involved in an improv show like Whose Line and then going on to another project that's scripted, do you find that a hard world to transition between?
It is a different muscle, and I never with a scripted piece, I'll never improvise unless I'm asked. With scripted stuff, the tough thing is you have so many people involved with the process. You have whoever wrote the script, which you're trying to get their vision out. You have directors who have their own agenda. You have executives, then you have advertisers. So there's a lot more people during the stew.
We do a 2-hour show in front of a live audience without any planning. So I have to sort of recalibrate my brain to memorize the lines and not in my brain come up with 10 other lines that I think might be funnier than the one that I'm saying in the script.
Yeah, right.
That's the curse of being an improviser is you end up delivering a lot of lines that are about in 9th place after the other 8 that you thought up.
Well, listen, so this is a return to Idaho Falls for you and Colin. Aside from coming here to perform, do you guys get to spend much time in eastern Idaho when you're here?
We unfortunately don't get to spend much time anywhere we go. Depending on where we're going, we fly either in the day of show or the night before. We do a show, and then we're usually on to somewhere else or leaving the next day to get back home. So there's very little time for being touristy or exploring, unfortunately. We see a lot of airports, hotels, and backstages of theaters.
Do you have any particular stops or restaurants or things like that you enjoy in Idaho Falls?
I don't know. theater the last time we were there. So there's a couple towns that if I go in early, like when on the East Coast, I usually go in the day before. So it's more likely that I can walk around during the day of the show because I got there the night before in towns like Milwaukee, where we've been a bunch of times, and I'm staying downtown. So I get a little more flavor then. But on other shows, also depending on where the hotel is, because we don't have rental cars, we're sort of picked up and dropped off.
Yeah.
You're like stranded in your Hampton Inn or, your Courtyard by Marriott, and the only thing around you is maybe an Applebee's and an Outback Steakhouse, but you're in sort of this area that there's nothing within walking distance other than maybe 2 chain restaurants. So unless you want to rent a car somewhere and then go exploring, it's not going to happen.
Right. What's been your favorite tour stop in all the years you've done this? Is there a particular one city you enjoy more than others, or?
It's so hard to say. We just recently got back from actually in November. Oh my God, it's been a year. Last November we were in Australia. We did for the second time, we went and did a 5-city tour, and that was a lot of fun. We've been to India twice, so that was just an amazingly fun culture shock. And then having toured London and gone through a couple cities in Ireland. So I like going to other countries because then I'm really sort of experiencing something that I don't know. I feel like I know every airport in North America. And, I get to see a lot of towns, and sometimes when I'm in a downtown area, I get to find out, oh, this is their great barbecue place, or, oh, this restaurant is good. And it's sort of a fun little surprise.
When you relax, when you're at home, what kind of shows do you watch? What are the kind of things you enjoy?
Oh, God. What do we watch? Netflix has so many things. We're into the Kaminsky method right now. Breaking Bad was a big thing for me, and Mad Men. There's so many choices out there. It's hard to keep up. Every time, about to start something, friends will recommend something else. So I'm always looking for something that's just different, unusual, things I haven't seen before. But yeah, there's certainly no lack of choice out there.
For your improv work, or really for any creative thing you do, for that matter, where do you draw inspiration from?
From life and from looking at people. A lot of our improv is, of course, dealing with just wacky things that wouldn't happen. But a lot of things we do are also like human behavior things, where you go, oh yeah, I recognize that in me, and just the absurdities of modern life. Dealing with lack of communication between people right now. Everyone's into their screens, or they don't listen to each other. So everyday life, anything that we sort of come across is inspiration. Whether most of us are old movie buffs, so we get a lot of inspiration for that. I was a big SCTV fan, so there's a rich history of comedians out there who I tend to steal stuff from.
That's great. Well, we're excited to see you perform in Idaho Falls, November 29th at the Idaho Falls Civic Center for the Performing Arts. Anything you want to say to people in Idaho Falls ahead of your stop here?
I just hope to see them out there because it's so much fun. If they love Whose Lines, then they will be blown away and really love this show. Seeing it live is a totally more exciting experience.
It's a fun show. It's family friendly. We never do anything that's more risque than what the TV show was. So it's just, and we never take any political stuff. So it's 2 hours to get away from anything else that's going on in the world.
Scared Scriptless is coming to the Civic Center for the Performing Arts in Idaho Falls, November 29th. Tickets are available through the Idaho Falls Arts Council's website. We will post a link in the article below this interview. For EastIdahoNews.com, I'm Rhett Nelson. Thanks for listening.